Greece has passed legislation that will bring in a 13-hour working day. Employees will be able to take on extra hours for 40% more pay and can't be sacked for refusing overtime. But the move has been met with fierce criticism and nationwide protests amid accusations of workers' rights being eroded. Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Greeks already work the longest hours in Europe while earning the least. Their government has now passed legislation making it possible and optional for workers to put in a 13-hour day. Critics say it destroys hard-earned workers' rights and will damage family life and work-life balance.
They came in their thousands to protest, with nationwide strikes bringing parts of Greece to a standstill. But despite the opposition, Greece's 13-hour day bill has been pushed through Parliament. The government says it's voluntary and workers won't be fired for refusing overtime. It says it's within the European Union's working time rules. But opposition MPs say it's devastating for workers.
There have been some hard measures, hard interventions in the past from the same government with regard to workers' lives, such as the extending working day to 10 hours initially. So I would say that overall we are facing for some years now severe deterioration in workers' rights and lives.
Unions argue it will chip away at workers' rights and open the door for exploitation.
A 13-hour workday is the end of our lives. Just imagine working from 7 in the morning until 8 in the evening. There's no life, there's nothing, and all of that just to survive.
People will just live to work. Whatever they make from their job will not be enough to survive. They are asking us to work continuously. There will be no free time to spend with our families.
Greece already has one of the longest working weeks in Europe, around 40 hours on average. In comparison, Germany is 34 hours a week and the Netherlands 32. And the country is still rebuilding following its debt crisis, which began in 2009. Official EU figures show that years of austerity have wiped out a quarter of its economy. While economic signals have been positive in recent years, wages are still among the lowest in Europe. So is working longer hours the answer to Greece's economic troubles, or just another burden on people already stretched to the limit?
Well, let's bring in our guests for this one. Joining us from Athens in Greece, we have Rania Antonopoulou. She's a senior economist at the Levy Economics Institute. In Duisburg, in Germany, we have Gerhard Bosch. He's professor at the Institute for Work, Skills and Training at the University of Duisburg-Essen. And I'm delighted to say here with me in the studio, we have Vicky Pryce, who is an economist. Well, let's go to Greece first of all. Rania, how are people feeling about this new legislation? We've seen the protests, we've seen the news coverage. Just give me your assessment of what the average Greek worker is thinking.
The climate is not positive whatsoever. There is a lot of concern and a lot of questions are being raised because this new introduction of deregulation hits the regular full-time jobs, and this is unprecedented, actually. It is not as if now we are introducing new ways of engagement like mini jobs or 0-hour contracting. Now what we are saying is that in sectors and in occupations where there has been negotiations and collective bargaining agreements, now one of the conditions, that is the length of the working day, is changing, and employers can use that.
Thank you. Gerhard, to you, how much do you think this is to do with the fact that the Greek population is getting older and is actually shrinking, getting smaller as well? Has that played a role here?
I think not so much. I mean, in the Greek labor market, we find strong labor shortages, but the reason is a different one. 500,000 young, well-educated Greeks have left Greece over the last 15 years. And on the other hand, the employment rate in Greece is very low compared to other European countries, especially of women. So there is enough labor potential in Greece if you pay well. And I think this law is quite extreme. You have other countries which allow 10 hours hours per day and 48 hours per week, and in exceptionally probably 12 hours if there are accidents or urgency or whatever, but 13 hours for 37 days a year. This is extreme, and it means if you add 1 hour of breaks and probably 1 or 2 hours of commuting, it might add up to 15 or 16 hours per day. This is really extreme, and there will be fatigue, burnout, and also accidents might increase, especially in some industries like the construction industry.
Gerhard, you sound a bit shocked that the Greek government have done this.
Yes, I'm quite shocked because obviously the problems of the labor market are evident. I mean, you have high youth unemployment, you have low employment rate of women, you have emigration of the best people in Greece, and I think you will not solve these problems by deteriorating the working conditions. And I think they will be deteriorated because the law has sticks and carrots. The sticks are the longer working days, and the carrot is the overtime supplement. But if I look at Greece, Greece has mainly very small companies and a very weak labor inspection, very weakened trade unions, and the coverage by collective agreements, which used to be by 85%, is now down to 12%. So obviously at the company and plant level, there is no control, no unions, no labor inspections. So I really doubt that the Greek workers will get the 40% overtime supplement for the longer hours.
Thank you, Gerhard. Vicky, if we go back to the time of the crisis and the Greek economy really on the ropes, the narrative around Europe was they don't want to work, they're all retiring early, Greek people want a nice, easy life. What's going on here? Because it seems they've swung completely the other end of the pendulum.
Well, it wasn't true then, and it isn't true now. I mean, the Greeks are the longest or the hardest, if you want to call it that, depending on whether they're very productive, but the longest working people in the week of any in Europe. So they're right at the top of the scale. So they're already working many hours. The real issue is, of course, that they work many hours, but very often in two separate jobs because they need the extra money. Given everything that's happened in Greece, I mean, the very substantial drop in GDP, the fact it's taken forever for that to recover. Yes, Greece is growing faster now, but there is still a lot of poverty. And there is a very interesting statistic that has come out. The Eurostat must be, or one of the European Commission statistical bodies, now has a new survey which it produces and an index. And this is the subjective poverty index across Europe. And that one asks people whether they can make ends meet, or whether they find it impossible, or whether they find it very difficult. And they categorize it that way, or perhaps those who don't find it that difficult. So they ask that question. So it is a pretty harmonized question that they ask. And the average in Europe is about 17% of people who feel that they're actually in poverty. In Greece, it is just under 70%, 70.
Wow.
And that drives a lot of what's going on in Greece right now. Their ability to spend, their ability to have families, what jobs might be available, they're prepared to do. And I think what is this new law is supposed to do, at least as far as due democracy is concerned, is legitimize the long hours that the Greeks already do, but making sure they get properly paid and that they get the proper overtime as well that's due to them.
Are you optimistic that this will help people out of poverty then?
I can't really see why it's being done otherwise, rather than making sure that A, there is the labour force there, which is incentivized to do it, and B, that the jobs are more legal jobs. They're jobs that the government can have an oversight of, and they can actually check the types of, the length of work, the overtime paid, and there are lots of concerns about employers possibly abusing the system. What New Democracy is saying, in all sorts of things that I have read and received that do it, is that they're actually going to watch it very carefully and make sure this doesn't happen.
Thanks, Vicky. Rania, to you, Vicky hit upon the working hours that Greek workers are already delivering. So if I look at the figures, Greece, on average, 1,900 working hours a year. If you go to the UK, that number falls down to 1,510. And if we go to Germany, it's even fewer, 1,330. So the figures, Vicky's quite correct in what she says. Greek workers are putting in more hours than anyone else in Europe for less reward.
The argument has been that this is going to be the case for only 37 days per year and no more than 3 days per month. But let me tell you, it was 2 years ago that another minister introduced labor legislation, and what that did was to allow, instead of having a working week of 5 days, having a working week of 6 days. Now, the 6th day can be thought of as overtime, but according to the law, it is up to the employer and employee to negotiate the working days arrangement. What does that mean? It means that you may be asked to work on Saturday, and then your employer tells you that you can have Monday as the day off. And if you agree, then that is not considered overtime work. It is considered regular work. Now, if you take the extra hours over the 8-hour day, going to 13 hours, it is only the 12th and 13th hour that get overtime pay.
Thank you, Rania.
40%.
Thank you. Let's bring Gerhard back in. Gerhard, I just want to touch upon something you brought up earlier on, the effect on workers, burnout, and as Rania correctly said, some industries that are dangerous where people need to be really switched on, construction, shipping, using machinery. This is quite worrying.
Yes, it's absolutely worrying because we have clear evidence from working time research all over the world that the fatigue increases after 8 hours and especially after 10 hours. And the number of accidents will increase, and they are dangerous industries. So you endanger not only yourself, but also other people if you work in the construction industry and there's an accident, which is very often linked with heavy injuries and or even more. And so I think it's completely irresponsible to allow this. And if I take hospitals, for example, there's evidence if you work longer than 8 hours or 10 hours, then the number of incidences, this means wrong medicaments or wrong injections, increase. And therefore, it's well established that the normal day should be 8 hours. You can exceptionally, for some days, work 10 hours, but 13 hours is really extreme. And I asked the question myself, why is the Greek government doing that? And I cannot understand this even from a business point of view. I think it's a political message. It's a message to the population: you have to work harder for your money. And this will encourage many people to leave the country in the future. So it might not really help the country. And it also is a message to business. So we are business friendly, but what is the real effect of this law? I'm not so sure if it formalizes what already exists, because the informal sector in Greece is extremely high. It counts for 20% of GDP, and you have many companies where you have never seen a trade unionist or a labor inspector, and where people are intimidated and work very long hours. And but probably in some bigger companies now, where you have union representation, you will have longer hours, and there probably the carrot will work, because you have there in these companies you have some union reps who insist that the overtime supplement is paid. But I think it will not help Greece.
Gerhard, just tell me, do you think any other countries in the European Union might copy Greece? I mean, could you see Germany doing this?
No, not at all. I mean, the German law allows more than 400 overtime hours. This is more than in Greece, but we have collective agreements, and we have co-determination at company level. We have a strong labor inspection. So actually, we have mechanisms and institutions which prevents the use. But what is an international scene, and I think your question is going in this direction, is that in many countries, especially the employer side, wants to deregulate the labor market and go back in history to the 50s and make the 35 hours a week or the 40 hours week undone. And this is an international trend. So there's a big debate in France, for example, for increasing overtime. And to undermine the 35 hours week. So I think the trend is going into a deregulation of the economy.
Thank you, Gerhard. Vicky, it strikes me that the Greek government are saying to the people, we can't afford to stretch your wages, so we'll stretch your time. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, they're stretching their income, but I think, as Gerhard was suggesting, a lot of it is legalizing, as I suggested myself earlier, what goes on already. So at least now you get properly remunerated, and maybe you don't need to go for the other jobs that also mean that you may be a taxi driver for hours in the evenings after you've had a day's work, which they absolutely need to do something about, because wages are so low in Greece, and that's the real issue. And the interesting thing is, when you look at the number of hours that are worked across Europe, where you find that there are numbers which are closer to where Greece is, it is mostly the former Eastern European countries, where again wages are still very low, despite all these years of being members of the EU. So what we haven't seen in Europe is this equalization that should have happened because of the single market and being members, particularly in the countries which are members of the euro. So I think that's where the push needs to be. But in reality, even if you look at the number of hours that people are working, from what I understand it has to be with agreement. At least they will get something extra possibly as a result. And there are periods of rest, which seem to be part of it, because I read all the details that New Democracy has put out about how it would work. But talking about getting tired, absolutely agree with what has been said by both the other speakers. But even in the UK, when we were members of the EU, we managed to get an opt-out of the Working Time Directive so that our doctors could work all day and all night in order to look after patients. So it does happen across Europe that there are reasons for wanting people to work longer if necessary. But of course it has to be with the agreement of the workers as well. But if it means you get paid properly for the proper job you do, rather than having to try and do something else that probably pays you a lot less than even your proper job, then perhaps it can be welcome from that point of view.
Vicky, we've spoken recently on Roundtable about how well the Greek economy has bounced back, but you're still adamant that figure you gave us earlier on, 70% of Greek families are in poverty, despite some people working 2 jobs and more?
They feel they're in poverty.
They feel they're in poverty.
I mean, and the real problem that Greece has had through the Eurozone crisis is because of the bailout and everything else, a huge part of the middle class was basically eliminated. So their incomes are the same as a construction worker, for example, and so on. Yes, maybe they have some assets, they have the old house, but even that, of course, went belly up for a while, if one can use that expression. So we had problems in that area too. So they haven't really emerged from that slump in any way particularly richer. And we still have that sort of personal GDP per capita figures, which are still below where they were pre-crisis.
Thanks, Vicky. Rania, what's your prediction on this legislation? Can you see it staying and being a success, or will a future Greek government just rip it up and go back to the way it was?
Well, the hope is that there will be some compromise at the moment, and that in the future, definitely the law will be withdrawn. I think it is very important for us to realize that if you combine the two laws that I was mentioning earlier, it really will be to the benefit of the employer, and there is no benefit to the employee, because by legalizing both the length of the working week and the length of the working day, you're creating a kind of flexibility that is unprecedented. You had back in 1936 in Greece, the establishment of the 8 hours a day mandate, and this is now being eroded. So, despite the fact that people are arguing that in Greece, you do not, you have a shortage of labor. You can see that in the market, but I will agree with the previous speaker in that if the wages are very low and you have an educated, highly educated actually, labor force, the labor force is going to leave. You will continue having brain drain. There is a recent study that came out that says 50% of graduates of universities in the first 3 years of looking for work, they are thinking of leaving the country, 50%. So the labor laws are can be removed, but the basic problem that the Greek economy and working families have is extremely low wages. In terms of the ability measured in purchasing power parity, Greece is the lowest country, what your money can buy, your earned income, below Bulgaria as of 2025. So it's a complicated story, what is happening in the labor markets in Greece. And unless this is understood, you will have an overworked, underpaid population, and the brain drain is not going to stop.
Thank you, Rania. Gerhard, just final point to you. Just looking at the working week across the European Union, the shortest is now the Netherlands, 32.1 hours a week on average. Greece has the longest, 39.8. I mean, as Rania was saying, people are just going to relocate.
Yes, short working hours can be attractive for people, but in fact, the figures you quoted include part-time work. The full-time workers are working longer in the Netherlands, also in Germany, usually 40 hours or 38 hours a week. But nevertheless, I think the question of flexibility is a big point, and you can make working conditions much more attractive. I regard personally this law, Greek law, as a present to the touristic sector, because this is a highly seasonal industry, and it's the strongest or one of the strongest industry in Greece. And there are peaks of demand in the summer season and Easter season, and the alternative to hire and fire workforce and let them work long in the summer and gives them no employment in the winter are flexible yearly working hours. So they have a working time account and get a continuous employment over the year, and they have time off in the winter, and they work in the summer, but not 13 hours. This is too long. But for let's say they can work 10 hours per day, and then they have time off in the winter, and so you can combine flexibility with better employment over the year.
Thanks, Gerhard. Vicky, final point to you. Do you think he's right there, what Gerhard was saying, that this is mostly geared towards the tourism and hospitality sector, which is so important for Greece?
Well, yes, because when you see the restrictions that exist in terms of the extended hours that you can have, it's over a 4-month period that you're expected to be, you have to watch it, but you can do those hours within that. And 4 months, of course, when you think about that, it's the summer.
Greek summer.
Yes, although, of course, now they want to extend it to the whole of the winter. I'm still getting pictures of people swimming in Greece right this minute.
Wow. Vicky, thank you so much for your time. Rania, Efaristo and Gerhard, vielen Dank. We will see you all again on Roundtable. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.